I'd like
Okay.
to welcome everybody who's here. And if we get some more, I will certainly let them in. But right now, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker today, Jay Feaster, who in my computer is in the upper left and probably looks vaguely familiar to some of you. Jay is I want to get this right, the Vice President of Community Hockey Development. He's instrumental in getting the youth involved in hockey and works with the different arenas around town to get the youth involved. Jay was the general manager in the 2004 Stanley Cup champion. I pulled out my official parade T-shirt to go along with my current banner, and that's when I met Jay back in 2004 when I happened to be the NHL Lightning Fan of the Year, which was pretty exciting. So we've known each other and seen each other at events, and Jay's a fun person to talk to, and truly one of the nice guys in hockey. So Jay was here in 2004, and then after we beat Calgary, he decided to go help out the losers. And in 2008, was it, Jay? I think you went out to Calgary, and then
2010.
Pardon me, 2010.
Yep.
And then a few years later, I think in 2011 or 12, came back to the Lightning organization. So we'd like to welcome Jay back. And Jay, I'd like you to maybe make some opening comments. I have some questions. If you all have any questions, you can message them to me in the little chat. If you hit the chat, you can send it to just the host or the host and everybody, and I'll try to get to them. But I've got 6 or 7 of them to keep them busy for a while. So Jay, I'll let you make some opening statements.
All right, David, thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be with all of you today. I appreciate the opportunity to share some time with you and talk a little Lightning hockey. As David said, I actually go back, this is my second go around with the Lightning. I started in October of 1998 as the assistant general manager to Jacques Demers. If you remember back then, Art Williams had just purchased the team. He was the owner in June when the team drafted Vincent Lecavalier, first overall. In that draft, they also drafted in the 3rd round Brad Richards, who, as we all know, goes on to win the Conn Smythe with the Lightning in 2004. But Art was the owner. Phil Esposito and his brother Tony were the GM and assistant GM respectively. And Art told the organization when he bought it that everyone would have a year. Everyone would have a year to prove themselves. And so the team goes to training camp that year in Austria. And when they get back from training camp in Austria, Jacques fires Phil, he fires Tony. And at that time, Jacques Demers was the head coach, and he named Jacques the general manager as well. So now Jacques in the market for an assistant GM, and all of his old buddies. Remember where Jacques Demers had been? Montreal as a head coach. He'd been in St. Louis as a head coach. He'd been in Detroit, coach of the year there in Detroit. So he tapped all of his old contacts and tried to convince guys to come to Tampa to be his assistant GM. And they all turned him down. And it was because it was the Tampa Bay Lightning. And they didn't want to sign on for that. They didn't see a bright future ahead. And I actually got the recommendation from Pierre Lacroix, who was at the time the general manager of the Colorado Avalanche. And they were our affiliate in Hershey, Pennsylvania, the Hershey Bears in the American Hockey League, which is where I had been. And I got a phone call one day from Jacques. I was on the bus with the team. We were going to Rochester, New York to open our season. And Jacques was a very excitable and excited French Canadian. And in that French Canadian accent, he quickly said, "Why are you not in the National Hockey League?" And I said, "Because no one's given me the chance up till now." And he said, "I want to interview you." And I literally had the bus driver pull over. I called my wife to come pick me up. And long story short, went in for an interview in the weekend, was offered the job as Jacques' assistant coming out of that interview, and accepted to be the assistant general manager. And I thought things were going to be great. So again, this is the beginning of October of 98. By December of 1998, Art Williams was looking to sell the team. And it was quite the roller coaster ride from the time I got on board. And what got me thinking about it, and the reason I wanted to bring it up, was because one of the things that David said to me when he asked if I would do this, he said, I think it would be interesting for you to talk about what it was like winning in 2004 compared to what it is now. And really the thing that I find to be the biggest difference is that in 2004, we were playing with house money. We were the happy idiots in that we didn't know there should be pressure. We didn't know that the weight of expectations. This was a franchise that from 1998 through the 2001, 2002 season, I mean, if you count the overtime and shootout losses, we were losing in excess of 50 games every year. And as I've always said, when you're losing more than 50 games a year, nothing is right. The mustard for the hot dogs is not yellow enough. It's not spicy enough. It's not whatever enough. Nothing is right when you're losing that many games. And so I became GM in the middle of 01-02. In 02-03, under John Tortorella, we win the Southeast Division. We win the first playoff round in franchise history by defeating the Washington Capitals. We go on then to lose in round 2 to the New Jersey Devils, and they go on to win the Stanley Cup. Fast forward 03-04, we win the Southeast Division again. We're the #1 team in the East in the regular season, and we win the Stanley Cup. But that was never, I mean, in 02-03, we were thrilled to be in the playoffs and win a round. We were trending in the right way. My chief pro scout at the time, my director of player personnel was a Hall of Fame Flyers player, Bill Barber. But our chief pro scout was Rick Patterson. And Rick had actually been a coach of the Lightning, and he played in the NHL and a distinguished career. But at one point, we're in the Stanley Cup final against Calgary, and one of our players was really struggling. And Torts had been all over me about this player. And he's telling me that I can't even get him out there. He's scared of his shadow. I can't even send him out in the ice. And I had been talking with Rick about this previously. And we're up in the press box in Calgary. And I looked at him and I said, what are we going to do about this particular player? And he looked at me and he said, if you remember, I told you this player could help get you to the playoffs. I didn't tell you he could help you win the Stanley Cup. And I mean, again, it was a group that there were no expectations. We were playing with house money. And that to me is the biggest difference now. Imagine with the kind of club that Steve Yzerman and then Julien Brisebois assembled, imagine the pressure on the players who had been there a long time, the pressure on the head coach who'd been there for a long time. I mean, this was supposed to happen in 2014-15, and it doesn't happen until 2019-20. So to me, that's really one of the things that makes it such a totally different situation. These guys had to do it not only in the bubble and the uniqueness and difficulty of that, but they also had to do it knowing that anything less than the Stanley Cup was going to be a major disappointment. So that's a long-winded introduction, David, but I know you didn't expect anything less than that from me.
No, I agree. Let me introduce everybody real quick. Just raise your hands as we go around. Dr. Aaron Layden, Dr. Hunter Eubanks, Dr. John Curran, Vincent, welcome, Vincent Tadone, and Dr. Eichberg, Rodolfo Eichberg is waving his phone at us. I never had, I get goosebumps just thinking about it. The Game 7 of 2004 I don't know if any of you guys were there, but was just the most,
yeah.
And Rodolfo was, I'm sure he's got season
tickets.
It was the most exciting, I just want to say sports event, but I can't think of anything other than sports that I've been to that's so exciting. It was just the most amazing event. And I can only imagine what it was like playing in the bubble, because even though they had crowd noise piped in, they had videos from your home team, they had Sonia Bryson singing the national anthem. So they tried to make it what the home team was to the home team. But still playing, I guess once they started playing, they blocked everything out. But I think, I don't know if I mentioned to you, Jay, that maybe thanks to COVID, we won, because I think teams play differently in front of crowds. I mean, the old thing was they try to get too fancy. Kucherov tries one or two many passes. And maybe when there was no crowd, they didn't try to do this. So I'm sure if I were to ask you this question, I'm pretty sure how you would answer that for you, the 2004 had to be a little bit more exciting than this one because of all the events going on back then, just the fact of being there and participating in it. And I found my picture of the cup the other day, and I asked you the day that your name is on the cup, so that's pretty exciting. So I would imagine 2004 was probably a bit more exciting than this year was. I guess your first is
when you're the general manager of the hockey team and you're the one making those decisions and you're the one deciding who to sign as free agents or who to trade, who to acquire, who to move out of your locker room, all of those things. That responsibility. You are in the thick of it in hockey operations. I'm very fortunate to be back now and really working on the nonprofit side. The community hockey department, which I lead, is actually housed under the Lightning Foundation. So on the nonprofit side, but working for what I believe to be is the best owner in all sports. But it is totally different. I mean, when you're the general manager, you are the decision maker. As the vice president of community hockey development, I want to get kids playing. We want to have greater understanding and awareness of the game throughout our market, but I have absolutely nothing to do with hockey operations now.
We have another entry. Dr. Mahapatra is on the bottom there. One of my questions I wanted to ask you, as being general manager previously, does Julian ever come to you, or does anybody come to you and go, hey, what do you think about this deal? And in that light, what do you think's going to happen with the Tyler Johnson situation? I know we've already lost 3 or 4 players, and maybe you can comment also on, and one of my questions was a multiple question here. After the 2004 win, we had a lockout due to salary issues. How hard, and we lost Hobby Bulin after that, and we lost some other players. So, what do we face now? Does anybody ever ask you your opinion? What do we face now with the salary cap situation?
In terms of
what was it like losing players back then?
Yeah, in terms of asking the opinion now, not so much that people within hockey operations will ask, but other people within the organization will ask. And I think it's one of the, you always have to guard against it as a potential drawback in an organization, that if a former manager is in place, it's easy for the CEO or the CFO, whoever it may be, to go to that manager and say, former manager, and say, well, what do you think of that? What do you think of this? What do you think our problem is? Why aren't we winning right now? And really, when I came back in this role, I promised Todd Leiweke, who was the CEO at the time, and he was the one who hired me to come back. I promised him, I said, I'm not going to get involved in hockey ops. I'm not trying to take Yzerman's job or now Julian's. And so, every once in a while, what I'll get from somebody in hockey ops is the question, hey, you had so-and-so. You had such and such a player in Calgary, or you saw them all the time when you were in Calgary. Because I was in Calgary with the team from 2010 to the December of the 2013-14 season. So I get that question. In terms of losing the players, the worst thing that ever happened to us back in 2004 was the new collective bargaining agreement. And not just in terms of a salary cap. We already had a salary cap in Tampa. It was called our budget. This is the honest to goodness truth. Every year, Ron Campbell, who was our team president, and I, we would go to Detroit and see Mr. Davidson, Bill Davidson, our owner. And Mr. Davidson would look at Ron Campbell and he would say, Soup, I always called him Soup, Soup, I don't want to write a check for more than $15 million this year. Do you think you can keep the losses under 15 million? I mean, literally, that's what it was. So we had a budget, or we had a salary cap. It was called a budget. But the new collective bargaining agreement, it not only hurt us in terms of, it was the rules that hurt us, because what it did, it accelerated free agency for a number of our players. I always made it a point in signing guys that I never wanted the big guys. I never wanted LeCavier, St. Louis, Richards. I didn't want those guys to be up at the same time. I didn't want Danny Boyle and Pavel Kubino on the blue line to have their contracts expiring at the same time. And that was the thing that it really changed. It put us in a situation coming out of the lockout. We lose the entire 04-05 season, starting to get ready for 05-06. We're in a spot where we have to sign LeCavier, who is now 1 year away from unrestricted free agency at the unprecedented age of 26, thanks to that new collective bargaining agreement. So that was the big thing that really impacted us back then. And we were not able to keep that team together. We exercised our option in 04-05 on Hobby Bulin. We didn't play. And so instead of tolling those contracts, they just expired. So the $6.5 million option that we had for Nick's services as our goalie for that next season after the Cup win, it was gone. He became, by the rules, an unrestricted free agent. And I kept saying to his agent, just tell us what it is it's going to take, because we want to keep this group together. And it was always, well, we want the maximum that's permitted under the cap. Well, we had guys queuing up who wanted the maximum under the cap. What you're finding now is that because of COVID-19 and the shutdown and the fact that we're not playing in front of any fans, now you have the salary cap that's in place is going to remain flat. So no increase in the cap. And ours is a team that is right up against it and is going to have to move out salary. One of the things that Julian Brisebois, as GM, is concerned about is that we have a number of very good young restricted free agents. Anthony Cirelli is one of them, the defenseman Sergachev, who has really developed very, very quickly and blossomed very nicely since he was acquired in trade. Those guys need new contracts. And the concern is that you don't want to be in a situation where a team can tender an offer sheet to a player and you don't have the cap space to match that. And so that's why the urgency that was in place to move, for example, a Tyler Johnson. The reality is what we're finding is that as teams have started doing their business in free agency, that really teams don't have that much money to spend. And so I believe that now Julian is feeling a little bit better, that he doesn't have the same sense of urgency that I have to defensively block against the team tendering an offer sheet. There's no question he's still going to have to move out salary. The difference is now, as he will tell you, we're going to lose good players, and we're going to lose good players by having to pay other teams to take them. It's not going to, you won't be doing hockey deals. You're going to have to add a sweetener. So somebody's going to tell Julian, I'll be your friend. I'll be your buddy. I'll take Tyler Johnson and his contract off your hands. Oh, but I'm going to need that second round pick this year, or I'm going to need your top prospect in Syracuse. That's what I'm going to need. That's what you're going to have to pay me in order to help you out. So, we are going to lose good players. There's no question about that. I do believe that the sense of urgency has been quelled just a little bit due to the landscape right now with other teams not having that much money to spend.
It sounds like with the wheeling and dealing, what I'm sure a lot of us went through when we were kids and we had baseball cards, and I said, we'll give you a so-and-so, but I want two of so-and-so. So very similar. Thanks for that inside stuff, Jay. I was going to ask you, because I looked it up before, maybe the others would be interested in it, how the whole beard thing got started. And I looked it up, and it goes back to New Jersey, the New York Islanders, rather, in 1980. Can you give us some history of that?
You know what, David, I wish I could. I certainly, it's something that in my lifetime, it just seems as though that's what it has always been since the 80s. If you go back and look and you watch the old videos and the old highlights, you don't see that. You look at the Flyers teams of the 70s, the Bruins teams, you didn't necessarily see it. And as with everything, once it starts, then that's what everybody has to do. I did it. Back in 04, I had my playoff beard going, and unfortunately, it was quite the gray beard. And so and we have a lot of people internally who work for Vinnick Sports Group. We have a lot of people who they enjoy that opportunity to grow their facial hair during the playoffs, and so you see a lot of people in the company with beards. But mine, I'm afraid it'd be too much like Santa Claus. I get the crew cut because I want to try to cut the gray out, and it's at a point now that it just doesn't help. It is what it is.
It was a player on the Islanders. I forget. Boogie started with a B, and he started it. And apparently, you had to keep it. You couldn't cut it off during the whole playoffs.
Yep.
Until you lost, then you could get out. Now, if you lost the game, you could trim it. Yeah. You could cut it back a little bit and trim it. Only if you lost. If you won, you had to let it keep going. And then it said you were supposed to also keep it through the celebration, which I know some of the players kept it to their celebration, which was a good segue, because I wanted to ask you, have you ever seen a celebration for the Cup like we had? First of all, the boat parade. And second of all, Elke and I were at the stadium, and that was just, I've never seen such a bunch of drunken, fairly well-behaved hockey players or any sports team in my life. Pat Maroon was just too much, taking off his shirt and everything. Kucherov, who I always thought was this really quiet, I'm not going to say a whole lot because I don't want to get out there in the public. He was just crazy, hugging everybody, and he walked out on stage. He hugged the owner. He hugged Jeff. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's
and
one
he
of
was
the,
out there, and everybody's going Cooch, and he's inciting the crowd.
It's Kucherov hugging Jeff, and Jeff at first
he looked scared.
A look of real surprise. And I think both the act and the fact of who the actor was, because he too thinks that about Cooch. And so the social media meme was my wife telling me, remember, the boss is going to be at the company Christmas party. Don't drink too much. And then you slide down, and the next one is that picture, and it says me. Yeah,
it was quite a celebration. But I would just, they said there's never been a boat parade for the Stanley Cup, for one.
No, exactly.
And I just think it was a great, whoever put that on, the Lightning and the people at RJ Stadium did a fantastic job. I think the Lightning, well, the whole NHL and every team involved, as well as I'm not a basketball fan, but as well as the NBA and every team involved. And so far, baseball have all just done an awesome job overcoming the whole COVID thing. Can you give us any insight on stuff the NHL had to do up there in both bubbles to get this going?
Just in terms of arranging for the daily testing and to make sure that every day those guys, the minute they left the hotel to go to the arena, once they got there, they had to be tested again. And even in leaving, when a team was eliminated, the team normally, when you lose, you leave the building and you go to the FBO and you get on your charter flight, you fly back home. In this instance, you couldn't even do that. You had to stay overnight and then get tested yet again before you were allowed to leave the bubble. And what was interesting about it, and we heard about this throughout the playoffs, and really started to hear about it after it ended, the fact that there were two very different bubbles, one in Toronto and one in Edmonton. Toronto, there was much more of a sense of freedom. And I don't want to say normalcy because it's not normal, but they had access, for example, to BMO Field, the professional soccer pitch there in Toronto. And so if you saw the video, that we had guys out all the time throwing frisbees and playing, the flag football or touch football, kicking footballs, those sorts of things. And there was a sense of we can get out in the fresh air and we can enjoy it, and it's a little bit more normal. Whereas, and we heard this from our opponent from Dallas in the final, that, there were days, some of them went days, some of them went weeks, without actually going out into fresh air, because the main hotel in Edmonton, that actually connected to the arena. So you didn't have to go outside and get on any kind of transportation or walk to get to the arena at Edmonton. So I agree with you. I think, David, that the NHL did a phenomenal job in terms of being able to play the playoffs and do it in that environment. I also think the NHL did an incredible job of making it feel, you didn't necessarily feel as though it was an empty arena. I thought the pipe and drape and the curtains and how they dressed the atmosphere, I thought they did a real good job of trying to make it that you weren't in a hollow, sterile, empty arena. I can tell you that our guys, our management staff, commented about how incredibly cold it was in the arenas. And you think about that, the arenas are kept cold, obviously, all the time. But when you load in 20,000 people, you have that body heat. Whereas here, during the time in the bubble, they didn't. And they commented that particularly if you stayed back in the early rounds, if you stayed for the full day of games, you were pretty cold by the end of the day.
You haven't heard of anybody from the team. I mean, everybody was pretty close to one another following at the celebration. Nobody's come down with anything that you know of. I know some people can't even go home.
Right. Yeah. You still have to travel
Canada,
the restrictions into Canada, but no, I have not heard of that. I can tell you, my daughter, who is employed by the Providence College men's ice hockey team, she does their video and their team services and travel. She was just out in Plymouth, Michigan, as part of the USA Hockey's World Junior Development Camp. So they had 40-some players there. They had to be tested going in. They had testing while they were there. And she told me that they had testing before they could leave Plymouth. And I know it was one of the things that she said USA Hockey was very proud of, that all of the athletes and coaches and staff who went into Plymouth for this week-long camp, they all returned back to their colleges and universities without having COVID. So that was a good thing. And again, at least to the best of my knowledge, that's the situation with the NHL.
I've got one more question. If anybody else has any, I'll ask after I ask Jay this. I asked you this before and you didn't know, and maybe since I asked you a few days ago, you've got some more thoughts on it. Who might take, now that Mike Emmerich retired, who might take Rick Peckham's job?
Yeah, again, it's a good question. I think that the organization likes John Forsland. I know you and I had talked about him. You had expressed that you think he's very, very good. As I shared with you, I don't know what Doc Emmerich leaving NBC,
actually, I read where Kenny Albert was going to.
Yes, well, certainly, and Kenny is one of their, one of the leading guys in the NBC stable. As you know, Kenny does more than just the hockey. He does quite a bit of football for them as well. But it is, I truly, as you know, Bill Wickett is the EVP of communication, and he's the one who will bring candidates forward. The ultimate decision will be the CEO, Steve Griggs, and clearly Fox as well.
Well, I think I've run out of my question. I told Jay my printer stopped working on me, so I have to look on my computer. And one thing you didn't quite address was after we won the Cup and you shortly went back to Calgary, what was the feeling? Was there any joking with you, or what was the sentiment in Calgary now that you went back?
I can tell you this, David, it wasn't joking. This is true. I was fired by the Lightning organization when Mr. Davidson sold the team at the end of the 07-08 season. He sold the team to Oren Koulis and Len Barry. And at that point in time, they decided that they were going to run the team. They brought Brian Lawton in as the general manager. And so I still had 3 or 4 years left on my contract as general manager. And so My wife and I, we stayed here in the Tampa area. We have 5 children. At that time, our oldest was in 10th grade, and we knew that if she wasn't number one in her class at Tampa Catholic High School, she was close to it. And so we decided, let's stay here and let her graduate from here. And so we did. And she graduated in 2010. She ended up with a full academic scholarship to Providence College in Rhode Island. And so she went to Providence, and we rented this house because the market was so bad at the time we couldn't afford to sell it. We rented the house, and we moved to a house that we had just outside of Hershey, Pennsylvania. And literally, we never even got the moving boxes unpacked because in the interim, I got the phone call from Daryl Sutter, who was the GM in Calgary. When we beat Calgary in 04, he was both the head coach and GM at that time. Now he's just the GM, or then in 2010. And he said, do you want to get back in the NHL? And I said, I'd love to. And he said, well, I needed an assistant GM. And so I went to Calgary, and we moved the family to Calgary. And by December of that year, the team president wanted to fire the head coach, who was Daryl Sutter's brother, Brent Sutter. And it was just crazy. I would tell him all the time, every month I get a phone call from the president of the team, and he'd say, why shouldn't we fire this coach? And I would tell him all the reasons. The analytics, the data, the statistics. We're not that bad. We're close. We're this, we're that. And finally, in December of 2010, he called and he said, well, it's done. He said, we fired him. And I said, well, I told you this is a wrong decision. So I start defending the head coach. And he says, not him. We fired Daryl. So instead of firing the head coach, instead of firing Brent, they fired the general manager. And he told me, he said, you're going to be the interim GM. You're going to work on the same contract you're on right now. You're not going to get a penny more, and don't ask for it. And whatever you do, don't be lobbying for the job with the media. So that's how I ended. And then ultimately in the spring, April or May of 2011, he came and said, we're going to name you the permanent GM. But I will tell you that for the 4 years I was there was never a week that went by that I didn't hear about the purported Martin Jelena goal in Game 6 in 04 that presumably would have won the cup for Calgary. It was in. That was what I heard all the time. From the main owner, the chairman of the board, Murray Edwards, Jay, it was in. It was in. Jay, you know it was in. Admit it now, Jay. Come on, you can say it now. All these years, it was in. You know it was in. We had a Winter Classic game. They call it Heritage Classic in Canada, an outdoor game. We played at McMahon Stadium in Calgary, which is where the Calgary Stampeders of the Canadian Football League play. We had an outdoor game, and so Gary Bettman was in town, and the chairman threw a big party. He had the other 5 owners there. All the spouses are there. Gary Bettman and his wife are there. And at that dinner, the chairman of the Flames, he said, Jay, tell Gary, admit it. Tell Gary it was in. So, yeah, I heard it all the time.
Of course, you never admitted it. But you never admitted it.
No, I never did admit it. And the great part was that Martin Jelena, nicest guy you're ever going to meet, he was actually part of our staff when I was in Calgary. We hired him on the coaching staff, and Marty would never say it was in either. So,
well, I'm out of questions, and unless someone else, does anybody else have anything? Come on, all this, I must have stimulated something, you guys. Oh, you know what I want to know? I still haven't figured out, and you may not know this. Oh, I know what I want to ask. What do players say to one another in the Stanley Cup handshake? Just nice game, nice. I know some of them know each other and they hug one another and they got something to say. But for the most part, when they shake hands, what are the different things they say? And I still can't figure out why guys get kicked out of the face-off circle. If you have any insight into that, I just amazes me. They're just standing there. I know the defensive guy's got to put his stick down first, but either it happens so fast that you miss it, or they tell the linesman to go screw himself and he gets kicked out or something. I mean, you missed that last offsides call or something, but I have no idea if you got some.
Yeah, I mean, it is. That's the lines in terms of the face-off. The linesman will tell the players when they're set, okay, your stick goes down now. And sometimes the player won't put it down. He'll be told again, they'll be warned. Other times what will happen is that both players will prematurely go, so that both players are going before he's set to drop the puck. And he may kick one out, he may kick both out. I mean, part of that is arbitrary, but you can bet that if you see a player who is cheating and who is jumping it, you're going to get that. You're going to get
the guy. So he has to put his stick on the ice.
Right.
The defensive face-off guy has to put his stick actually on the ice.
There's a line there where he's right. That's exactly right. But the other thing that happened, I mean, as you very well know, I can tell you that we practice it all the time. We did it back in 2004. I know the team does now. You also practice cheating on those face-offs. You want to get every advantage that you can, because as we all know, you win the face-off, now you're in control. Particularly if you're in your own end. Now your offense can start. You have your offense set to go. So the face-offs are incredibly important. It's one of the things that drives me nuts about our team. I don't think we take it seriously enough. I don't believe that we focus enough on how critical it is to win the draw. And remember, it's never just the center iceman. You see teams that are good at and have the high winning face-off percentages. Those are teams where the wingers are coming in to help. The wingers are coming in to help control that draw. As far as the handshake line, I mean, it is what you'd expect. It's a great series, great job, congrats, good luck in the next round. When I thought you saw some real poignant moments in the Stanley Cup final this year in the handshake line, because you had Rick Bowness, who had been our associate coach for 4 or 5 years, and knew those players, most of them, if not all of them, and so you saw a guy like Victor Hedman take a particularly long period of time in talking to Rick Bowness in the handshake line, and so that conversation is, I'm sure from Hetty's perspective, it's thanking him for what he did for him in his career. And, sorry this had to be you, and what a great season you guys had, Bones. So that's the sort of thing. It is a lot of what you would expect. I
noticed when Cooper shook Bonus's hand, they didn't say a whole lot to one another.
No, and it's one of the things that I think was the national media, Eddie Olczyk and Doc. Doc was kind of waxing poetic about how these guys coached together and the good feelings, and Eddie interjected and said, well, Doc, remember, when you get fired from a place, not always all good feelings. And clearly, I think that Eddie hit the nail on the head there. If you go back, there had been a kind of a routine that was happening in Tampa, that when the Lightning would get knocked out, whatever that was, or not make the playoffs the one year, whenever they fell short of the Stanley Cup, the person who ended up paying the price seemed to be an assistant coach. And so, I know that it was a difficult thing for Rick Bowness. It was tough for him to leave here. And so, no, I did notice that too as well, David. There was not, there were no hugs and kisses there.
I told you this funny story the other day, and I'll let everybody else know. Back in, I forget, when the Lightning were playing in Tropicana back then, and Brent Gretzky was on our team, 2001 maybe, or something like that. And he faced off against his brother when he played for Los Angeles. And I happened to be there with my camera, and I asked this guy who was taking pictures, I said, mind if I take a picture through the little hole in the glass? And the guy goes, no, go ahead. And sure enough, the two Gretzky brothers stayed up. So I got a picture of them facing off, and it was supposedly it was the only time they ever faced off. And I got them both to sign it. But a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, Elka tells me, she goes, Brent Gretzky just called asking for you, called the medical association. So I call him back, and he had seen this picture, and he was hoping to maybe do something for one of his charities, but he never did. So we kind of texted back and forth. And this year I said, "Are you pulling for us?" And he goes, "No, he was pulling for Toronto in the beginning because he lives up in Canada." I said, "You can't even pull for us now?" He goes, "You guys fired me." I said, "That's business." I said, "Your brother got fired from, how many teams? Two teams? And he goes, "Yeah, that's right." So I looked up, and Brent scored 1 goal his whole NHL career, and that was for the Lightning. So, that's the way life goes. One thing, I've talked to you about this before, and is one of my pet peeves in hockey. I've written, I think, 6 letters to Gary Bettman. I actually spoke to one of the higher ups up there.
Colin Campbell.
Huh?
I think you spoke to Colin Campbell, didn't you?
I did. It was Colin Campbell I spoke to. I've talked to Phil about it. Almost everybody in the Lightning organization I've asked, and it drives me crazy that they don't count goals and penalties with the time left in a period. Now, I know that may not seem a lot to some of you, but if you're playing back a game and you want to see video, and you want to see when the goals were scored, you got to subtract from 20. And if you're mathematically challenged, then you have a difficult situation. And Michigan is one who always says when a goal is scored, how much time is left in a period. And everybody scratches their head, and Bettman goes, "Oh, I don't know." And Colin Campbell goes, "Oh, I don't know. It's probably just, tradition." And they do it I think they do it in the Olympics. I think they go by the time left.
Yeah, it's funny because while David said at the start, and we were talking before we all got together here, but we was talking about being the Lightning, the NHL fan of the year for the Lightning. David, I actually think that we met before that, because I think that I too got one of those letters, and I responded and said I didn't know.
Oh, I sent you?
I think so. Because I know that's, yeah.
I may have. Now I sent them to Wicket, and I sent it to Yzerman, and I sent it to Breezewa, and they just all ignore me like everybody else. Does anybody else have any? Jay, I want to thank you. If anybody else has a question, come on. Somebody must want to know something about somebody. Oh, you doctors are just, everybody awake? Come on. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Rodolfo, you don't have you're a big season ticket holder, big fan. You don't have any questions?
Only half season, but that's all right.
Well, ask half a question. Ask
No,
half a question.
I don't have any. Can you name some of the players we're going to lose?
That we're going to lose? Well, certainly we're going to lose Tyler Johnson.
That's not much of a loss between you and me.
I don't think there's any question he's going. I think the one guy that I don't believe we want to lose, but I think has real value, and they might be able to swing a deal for, is Alex Killorn. That's one where, again, the contract's not all that oppressive, and he's still productive. He does a number of things for you. He's a good penalty killer. So that's one that again, I don't think we want to, but we might. I think the big issue, and it's been kind of an interesting thing to follow, is when Julian talks about the untouchables, one of the players who is not an untouchable is our captain.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, when you look at that contract and the length and the commitment, in my mind, that's an unmovable contract. But when you're GM and you're looking at $10 million that you have to move out, and you have one guy making $8.5 million, that goes a long way to solving your problems for you. But he has a complete no trade, no move, and so he is in full control. And it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. Go back to Tyler Johnson, and the reason that he's placed on waivers, in my opinion, is, Tyler worked with the team, I understand, and gave a list of a couple of teams, a handful of teams, where he would agree to waive his no trade, no move. Not getting a deal done, the way you get the player, in theory, to expand that list is that you say, well, okay, you don't want to work with me, I'll put you on waivers. And now any team can claim you for your waiver price, which is nothing. It's insignificant. And now you're just going to have to go to whoever claims you. In this case, that
don't you have to pay, and wouldn't the Lightning have to pay his salary?
No, that's the great part. If you're
Oh.
claimed off waivers, the claiming team has to pay your
I
salary.
gotcha.
That's the purest way that you get nothing back, because honestly, the waiver price on Tyler Johnson, the waiver price is probably less than $10,000. It's set forth in the CBA and it's based on years of experience. But you do get out from 100% of the contract. Whereas, David, you're right. What happens now is you're going to give up an asset, whether that's a draft pick or a good prospect or a player, to have somebody take his contract, or you're going to have to retain part of his salary.
Do you think, I'm almost afraid Stammer is going to run the course of Vinny, where Vinny, after Vinny was traded, injury, his foot and some other injuries really hampered him. I mean, we got Dr. Tudone was an orthopedist, but the sports injury has to be something that's difficult to overcome, I would think. And now he's had 2 surgeries.
Yeah, exactly. That's to hear that he had another core surgery here in the after the playoffs. That is concerning.
Yeah. Any other questions? Any other thoughts, Aaron?
I'd like to ask, obviously the COVID situation has really cut into the revenues of the Lightning. But I wonder if you could speculate on how it's affected, how that will play out into the future after the pandemic is over. And secondly, whether the other professional sports will have similar effects.
Clearly, it's one of the impacts it's going to have is, where is the salary cap going to go? That's the teams don't have the revenue coming in. In our sport, unlike football, for example, the NFL, where you have the big television contracts, we are a gate-driven league. And I can tell you that our internal projections, and this was a projection that we would play a full 82-game season next year, which would also mean that you'd have 41 home games, and that capacity and I'm talking 2021, and that capacity would be at 25%. Under that scenario, between what was lost from the stoppage on March 11th or whatever it was, through the end of the season and postseason, our projection was that we're talking in excess of $50 million for our club. And now you're hearing things such as, well, we may have to go to 6 or 7 or 8 bubbles, and we may not be able to start with fans. I mean, I think it's a catastrophic situation for professional sports teams. And I say we're lucky, because I think we play for the greatest owner in the game. And while there are so many of our colleagues that have been either furloughed or permanently laid off, the Lightning organization, thanks to Jeff Vinnick, he has kept us employed. He has kept us working, and it's a tip of the hat to him. To say that we as employees are not concerned about it would be a dramatic understatement. It's something we talk about all the time. And it's great that we won, and we're all excited that we won, and there's a genuine excitement about it. And yet the reality of it is that not being able to monetize that, to capitalize on that the following season, it's very disconcerting.
Jake, we've lost Bogosian, Shen, I think. Verhaeghe.
Verhaeghe, thank you. Yeah.
I thought one more, but
Stevens.
the
defenseman from the Rangers who went and signed in Anaheim. He signed a 1-year deal with us this year. Shattenkirk, yes, thank you. Yeah, okay. He signed, I think, a 4-year deal in Anaheim.
Well, good question, Aaron. I think personally, right now they're sending out for season ticket holders if you want to upgrade your seats or change your seats. And I emailed my rep. I said, I just don't see us playing in a full arena this next season. I just don't think it's going to happen. So we'll see. We can only hope. Vincent, do you have a question?
No, my experience goes back to the 60s.
Can't hear you.
My experience with hockey goes back to the 60s. Can you hear me?
Can you? I think you're asking. You still can't hear you.
I'm not on mute. So.
No. I think you were saying something with your experience. You got your mic on? Turn your volume up on your computer, maybe. You still there? Wave. No, we can't hear him. I think he was going to say something about sports injuries, maybe. But I don't know. I know people have come back with them. I think it's just probably one of the hardest, especially for a sport like hockey, to come back and be productive. But we can only hope. His moment, though, that he scored that goal was one of the other big moments that we'll all remember.
Can you
Yeah,
hear me?
that's Hollywood stuff.
Can you hear me now?
Barely.
Barely.
Try.
I'm a little way up on volume. Okay, I don't want to take everyone's time. I have these
Okay.
problems, sorry.
Well, Jay, I want to thank you again. It's for me, it's been a great hour and so informative because I love this stuff. And I want to thank you for everybody who's here. And we may post it on the website, HCMA website, if anybody's interested in catching up with what's going on with the Lightning. So you're welcome to leave the meeting, and I'll be in touch with you.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So, hope everybody enjoyed that. I don't know if everybody's as big a hockey fan as I am. I know Rodolfo is. I hope everybody liked that. I found the inside stuff really enjoyable. So, if anybody, I'm going to try to get. If anybody has any idea for speakers or knows anybody, I was going to try to get Dan Lucas from WFLA. I've texted him emailed him a couple times. He's gotten back with me, but he's out in Arlington now for the World Series, which is really something now that the Rays. Of course, last night's game was a little more encouraging. The first game.
Yeah.
And I don't know if any of you're probably all thinking, well, if the Rays win and then the Bucks win, that'll be a first-time thing with all three teams. Well, it won't be, because it was in the paper the other day that Detroit, in 35 and 36, John probably remembers this very well.
Not quite.
The Tigers won, the Red Wings won, and the Lions beat the Giants in the NFL championship game. So that was the threesome there of professional victories. So anyways, again, John had come up, let's see, Raj was here last time, Aaron, and Kirit was here, Patel, and Kirit brought up the thing about NICA and how docs are still having to pay into it, and he's not sure what good it still does. And John and Kirit both came up with some information about how they got a lot of money in their accounts, and I think they've got Chinese bank accounts also. So I suggested to John and Kirit, if they want to pursue what good NICA still might be, to bring it up to the executive council, because I'm not sure we as a group as a retired group can do much about it, although it certainly is something that practicing physicians would certainly care about and want to resolve. But I thank John for his indulgence and his contribution on that. If anybody, anybody want to talk about anything exciting going on? We're actually going out to dinner with two other couples to outdoor seafood place Saturday, so that's gonna be exciting to get out in the world again. And has anybody gone out to restaurants or found anything, worthwhile to do? Oh, my Elka. Go ahead, Hunter.
We've been to outside seating. We went to Eulalie for lunch yesterday and sat outside, which the weather was very nice. By the river and everything was very good, but no indoor plans, and not doing vaccine comes around.
Yeah, no, I don't have any indoor plans either, but Elka found this place online. It's in Holiday. It's the Comedy Hall of Fame. And so we're going to head up there in a couple weeks. I called up there and they're not very crowded during the week. And you could get tickets are $12 a piece, but if you got them on Groupon, they were about $6 a piece. So it sounds like a nice drive out in the country and then going to see something that might be worthwhile. Figure if we can sit and watch the Abbott and Costello Who's on First routine 3 or 4 times like we did when we went to the Baseball Hall of Fame, that'll make the trip all worthwhile. Has anybody been to the Baseball Hall of Fame? Anybody else? No? Oh man, should be on everybody's bucket list.
Dame un poquito de ese jugo aquí.
Pardon me? Oh, Rodolfo said something.
No.
We actually were up there on my birthday on August 21st, 2 years ago, when the eclipse actually occurred while we were outside eating somewhere, and somebody lent me their glasses, so that was pretty cool. But the Hall of Fame was really pretty neat to see. Aaron.
Since you bring that up, I had the occasion in 1998 to go to Eveleth, Minnesota, where the world's largest hockey stick is on display.
World's largest hockey stick?
Yeah, that's right.
How big is it? How big is the biggest world's biggest hockey stick? I'll be your straight man.
Maybe 20 feet long.
Oh, wow. I want to see the hockey
maybe
player
more.
that
I'm not
used it.
sure. I can't remember it. But Eveleth, my father grew up on the Mesabi Iron Range of northern Minnesota. And we heard stories about it all my life. But my brother and sister and I went up there. We had to see it for ourselves. And it was, I had no idea at that time that it would be relevant to our conversation today about the Tampa Bay Lightning. But Eveleth was a town where I think, if I remember correctly, in the 30s, they fielded a team that basically made up most of the U.S. Olympic hockey team.
Was it a hockey stick that somebody actually used?
Oh,
No, it was a huge monument.
Oh, I got you.
And I believe, I may have this wrong, but I haven't thought about it in years, but I believe that the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame was in Eveleth at one time. If it's not, I'm not sure where it is today.
It's in Toronto. If anybody's interested, one of the world's, I guess this year's largest pumpkin is at the Beers stand out on Beers Avenue, the 950-pound pumpkin, if anybody wants to go out and see it too.
wow.
So, yeah, I know, right? So it's about 1 o'clock. Unless anybody else has anything else, we'll wrap it up. Let's everybody have a safe Halloween around their house. And I don't know if we'll do something before Thanksgiving or maybe save it till after. I don't know. We'll see how things are going. But thanks everybody for coming, and everybody stay safe.
Thank
All right,
Do you have any
Thank
ideas?
you.
Do you have any ideas for a speaker, or you know anybody who'd like to come? I know my brother-in-law is in the security department at the Home Depot corporate office. I'm sure he would come on and talk to us about security for your computers, or home security, passwords, different. If you want to use a double password, what might be the best company, how to use that, how to protect yourself. So that's an idea for maybe one of our meetings. If anybody else has